Hello everyone. It's great to see you all again. I wish you all a wonderful and happy day with your families. Today, I will introduce you to a familiar fruit tree that is widely grown in Vietnam and Southeast Asia, the pomelo tree. This tree is very well suited to the climate of Vietnam, where I live. Not only does it produce sweet fruit, but the pomelo also brings significant economic value, helping many people in my hometown earn additional income and stabilize their lives. Amidst the peaceful space of the cool green grapefruit orchards, a new day begins for Han. After all the ups and downs she has been through, Han's child is finally healthy again. Her visit to her mother the day before also brought joy as her mother had fully recovered. This morning, Han woke up feeling more cheerful than usual, her heart filled with hope for the peaceful days ahead. But will Han's life really be as peaceful as she hopes? Or are storms still quietly waiting in the wings? As Han stepped into the kitchen to prepare breakfast, a small but strange thing happened. The bowl in her hand suddenly fell to the floor and shattered. This stunned Han, because she had always been very careful. According to local folklore, breaking a bowl in the morning is often seen as an ominous sign, foretelling that something bad is about to happen. Han's heart suddenly tightened. The first thing she thought of was her mother, then she worried about herself. Hundreds of chaotic thoughts flooded her mind. Was something about to happen to her family? Or was the peace she had just touched about to slip away? Han stood silently in the kitchen, looking at the broken bowl at her feet, her heart filled with unease. So really, after that omen, what was waiting for Han ahead? But then, Han took a deep breath. Her life had already been through so many twists and turns. If she let worry consume her mind, she would not have the strength to move forward. The immediate task was to take care of her child and little Quinn, so Han told herself to push those unfortunate thoughts out of her mind. After dropping off little Tom and taking Quinn to school, Han quietly went to a familiar place, the grapefruit orchard, which was in harvest season. The ripe grapefruits, plump and round on the branches, seemed to give her hope. Hope that today's business would go smoothly, that luck would smile on her and her children. With her diligent hands, Han cut each grapefruit one by one, gently placing them in the basket. Moving from tree to tree, the basket was soon full. Beads of sweat fell from her forehead, but her eyes still shone with determination and resolve. After hurried steps, the new market appeared before her eyes, bustling and lively with all kinds of stalls. As soon as she laid out the pomelos, thanks to everyone's affection and the ripe, delicious fruit in season, Han's basket of pomelos sold out in no time. She held the money in her hand, her heart overflowing with joy, feeling as if all the morning's fatigue had vanished. Carrying that small joy with her, Han hurried home, her heart racing with anticipation to welcome little Tom at her sister Men's house. In her heart, that simple happiness grew with every step she took back home. Elsewhere, on a deserted concrete road, a man suddenly appeared, running frantically. He carried a worn backpack on his shoulder, looking as if he had just escaped from something urgent. Sweat drenched his back, his breathing was labored, and his eyes kept darting behind him as if afraid someone was chasing him. It turned out that after a long period of rehabilitation, he had been released. That man was none other than Han's husband, the man who had pushed her life into tragedy, causing Han so much suffering that she and her child had to wander around, lost and alone. He had been an alcoholic and a violent man, destroying their once happy home in tears. Now, he returned empty-handed, carrying a past full of guilt and an uncertain future. After his time in prison, had he truly changed? Or was this return just the beginning of a new storm, continuing to crush Han's life? And more importantly, when faced with the man who once destroyed her family, what will Han do? Will she be strong enough to close the door on the past? Or will she open her heart to a lost soul returning, placing her trust once more in the man who caused her such profound pain? But ironically, as Han was on her way to pick up little Quinn, Dan suddenly rode up on his motorcycle, looking just as familiar as every time he visited. Don stopped, asked a few questions, then bent down to stroke little Tom as usual. Today, since he was passing by, Don offered to give Han a ride, as a small way to help her out. Han didn't have time to think much before nodding her head. The sound of the engine roared, and Dan drove Han away, carrying with him the carefree and ordinary kindness of an acquaintance. But not far away, behind a tree by the road, Han's ex-husband stood silently watching everything. He saw everything from the familiar look in Dan's eyes toward Han and her child, to the moment Han sat in the car so naturally. He wanted to step out, wanted to call Han's name, wanted to ask for an explanation, but his legs felt stiff, his throat tightened, and he couldn't utter a word. Thousands of questions pounded in his head like a hammer. Who is he? Who is that guy? Why is he taking Han away? Each thought was like a knife digging deep into the pride and guilt of someone who had just returned from the darkness. At that very moment, a seed of hatred began to sprout within him, silent, quiet, but dangerous. The sound of the motorbike faded away. Han and Dan disappeared from sight. Only the man remained standing silently by the tree, like a lost shadow in broad daylight. In his hand was a small toy he had bought as a gift for little Tome. Looking in the direction the two had just left, he clenched his teeth, then suddenly threw the toy forcefully to the ground. He turned and walked away, his steps heavy, as if trying to let go of something. But perhaps he was carrying within him a storm that was about to descend upon Han's life once again. On the other side, Han and Dan were still cruising along the familiar road, unaware of what was silently unfolding behind them. While waiting for little Quine to get out of school, Dan drove Han to the irrigation station to enjoy the breeze. The breeze was cool, carrying the scent of the fields and fresh water vapor. Han sat in the back, feeling a rare sense of relief, temporarily forgetting the bad omen from that morning and the unease that had just flashed through her mind. She didn't know that while she was enjoying those peaceful moments, a storm was quietly approaching the little house. Han's ex-husband was slowly approaching the house. Each step he took felt heavy, as if he were stepping on his own painful memories. He remembered clearly that the last time he was arrested was also at this very place. Because of that, his anger suddenly flared up violently. He looked around, his lips trembling as he muttered, So you two were cheating on me in this house. You ruined me." The curses poured out in his frustration, as if wanting to tear apart the quiet space. In his mind, he saw Han smiling at Dan before getting into the car. Just thinking about it made his blood boil. He was frantic, wanting to smash and destroy everything right now to vent his hatred. In those bloodshot eyes, Han was no longer the woman he had shared a bed with, but only a traitor. And it was this distorted thinking that was pushing him further and further down a dark path. Then, the man lost control of himself. All his pent-up emotions had reached their limit. His rage exploded violently, and he rushed forward and kicked the door hard. Bang! The door burst open and shattered. He stormed into the house, smashing everything in sight. Piece by piece, every corner of the house, where Han had worked so hard every day to shelter her children from the rain and sun, was destroyed in an instant. He smashed and screamed and cursed, as if wanting to vent all the resentment in his heart on everything in front of him. The screams echoed throughout the neighborhood. At a house not far away, Thon, the landlord's son, heard the commotion and rushed over in panic. But when Thon arrived, everything was already in ruins. The door was broken, furniture was scattered everywhere, and the walls were shaking. Seeing Thon appear, Han's ex-husband was startled. Like a beast that had been discovered, he turned and ran. Than hurriedly chased after him, trying to catch him, but how could he hold on to someone running in a state of panic and madness? He could only helplessly watch as his figure gradually disappeared. Thon stood frozen, not understanding what had just happened. But seeing the house becoming more and more unstable, as if it were about to collapse, he didn't have time to think much. Thon ran to find a strong rope and used all his strength to hold back the cracking walls. He knew the house was still unfinished, and if it collapsed, Han and the children would have nowhere to turn. But things became even more complicated when Thon's father appeared. The scene before his eyes left him speechless. The house in ruins, Thon pulling on the rope, looking as if he was trying to make the house collapse. Without waiting for an explanation, he rushed over and even hit Thon, thinking that his son was back to his old ways. Thon panicked, trying to explain himself, but at this point, there was nothing to prove his innocence. His past destructive behavior made his words meaningless. The already fractured father-son relationship was now completely shattered. In frustration and despair, Thon left, carrying with him the injustice that Han's ex-husband had sown. The one who caused it all, that misguided husband, had come in the darkness and left in the darkness, leaving behind a tangled mess, signaling that the stormy days were far from over. On this side, Han still had no idea what had happened. After picking up little Quinn, Han and Dawn drove each other back near Main's house and said goodbye. Han walked little Quinn along the familiar dirt road home, her heart still filled with the peaceful feeling of the afternoon. But as soon as she turned into the alley, Han suddenly stopped. Before her eyes was a scene of devastation. The small house was left with only cracked walls, doors blown open, and furniture scattered everywhere. Han stood frozen for a few seconds, then collapsed, her heart feeling like it was being squeezed. All her hopes, all her efforts over the past period, were now gone, buried in the rubble. She couldn't understand why everything had turned out this way. There had been no warning, no sign that would have allowed her to prepare. Thinking of little Tom and little Quinn, thinking of the prospect of the three of them having to sleep under the open sky, Han burst into tears in despair. Trying to pull herself together, Han rummaged through the rubble, picking up a few remaining items. She hugged the two children and hurriedly left to find Uncle Kwa for help. It was late afternoon, and the wind was picking up. Han feared that when night fell, if it rained, the children would not be able to endure it. As night fell, the road was lit only by faint lights, and the three of them arrived at Uncle Kwa's house. Han knocked on the door, calling loudly, calling repeatedly. But the only response was silence. She didn't know that he was away, and the door was locked from the outside. After countless futile calls, Hen let go of the door and sat down on the porch. It was completely dark now, and the cold wind blew in gusts. The three of them hugged each other tightly, officially becoming homeless, sleeping under the open sky, in the darkness and despair, with nowhere to turn.